fine. That's fine. So I'll just start out. My name is Alana Hamlet. I work in the Student Activities Office. I do leadership development within the office, and I run several leadership programs. We have an Emerging Leaders Conference that we do, the Community Catalyst Leadership Program, Leadership. They're all programs underneath our office. So I'll go ahead and get started. So why do you think networking is important, and what is it? So yeah, creating a network that's bigger than just your friends, professionally, people who know you, who can vouch for the work that you do, the caliber of professional that you are. Why do you think it's important? What do you think is important to network and have a network?
It can be career building.
Yeah, people can make you can get jobs from networking. You can find people to start businesses with. There's a lot of opportunities that you can allow yourselves from networking. Does anybody find networking weird or uncomfortable? Does anyone find it weird to like walk up to someone that you don't know and say your name? I do. So when you think about networking, it's we base it on like the process of discovering and developing connections between people, both in person and virtual. So you can also network virtually. And so that's another thing to think about when you start to think about expanding your network. And it's moving beyond just your friends and your family to the academic and professional connections and how those will help you. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of tips and strategies relative to networking. So when we think about networking, we're going to break it down into 3 parts. The conversation, the first impression, the conversation, and the getting out, the wrap-up part. And I'll give you a little bit of tips on how to do each one, and then I'll give you some time later on to practice in smaller groups. So when you think about the first impression, the 3 things that you're thinking about is your name tag, your handshake, and your pitch. So what is it that if you're talking to someone for 3 to 5 minutes, what are they coming away with about who you are and what opportunities there are for them to get to know you better, or the skills that you bring to the table? Does that make sense? Who knows on what side your name tag should be worn? So when you put a name tag on, which side should be on? Yep, that's exactly right. So you want it on your right side. So when you go to, so let's do this. So when you go to shake my hand, if my name tag was here, your line is either going to go here, and it's not awkward to go over there. So it totally makes sense to keep your name tag on the right. What about when you shake hands? What are some tips or do's? What have you heard about how you shake hands? Should be nice and firm, and you want to go web to web. So I'm going to try it with you. So you want to go in web to web, and you want to shake. So you want a firm handshake, and you want to do about 2 shakes. You ever had that person that shook your hand and it's like, because they're shaking too many times? So you go in web to web, very firm, and then you let go. They say your handshake should last about 3 seconds, basically. And you're always making eye contact when you're shaking someone's hand. That's like kind of, I mean, it feels like a given, but I can't tell you the number of times that students come into my office and they shake my hand and they're looking around or they're looking down. You want to make eye contact with the person because that shows confidence. And that's one thing that networking is about. It's about showing confidence as you go on. So you meet, they know your name, you give your handshake. What do you think are things that you should be thinking about with a pitch? Like, what would your pitch be? Like, what are the things about you that you would want people to know at this point in your life? Major. Yep, your major. What about what you're interested in doing, whether it's an internship or a job? So what interests you are. Maybe location, where you would like to work. If you want to stay here in Boston, or you're from a specific area and you want to go back to that area. All things you should be thinking about. And then thinking about how you wrap up the conversation. So if you're at a party and you want to, talk to someone else, you might think about how you do that in a way that you're not just walking away from the person and they're like, we were just talking. So thinking about how you exit the conversation is just as important as thinking about how you enter the conversation and, start one with someone that you're interested in talking with. So in networking, we also think about the 3 W's. And this is something to think about when you start your conversation and thinking about your pitch. So where am I? Whether it's a career fair, a business dinner, a reception. So thinking about the location, what do I have in common with the person? So whoever it is that you're talking with, what commonalities do you share, if any? And what can I say? So what do you want to say to the person? What's important? What are the things that you want to get across in the conversation? And then continuing the conversation, keeping it going, thinking about questions. So if you're talking to someone maybe who potentially could have a job, questions about the organization that they work for, prompts, whether it's you read an interesting article relative to the work that they do, elaborating on things relative to what you do. So, if you go into a meeting and you say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm course 20. Well, if someone doesn't go to MIT, they have no idea what course 20 is. And so elaborating on what that major is, what classes you're taking within that. If the conversation is starting to get stale, introducing new topics that you can discuss, and really just listening. Listening, I can't stress how big and how important that is. And lots of times you're in conversations where you can tell people are just trying to figure out the next thing to say. So you really want to be listening to what's happening in the conversation that you're having, because there might be something that you didn't even expect to come out of the conversation. If you're not listening, you're going to miss it. Any questions so far? Does this stuff make sense? Okay, so when you think about ending the conversation, you want to use an I message to acknowledge the appreciation you have of the person and then state your need to move on. So I really appreciated getting to learn more about your job. There's someone across the hall that I really want to get to chat with before the reception is over. It was really great to meet you. Or I really have to go now. It was really nice to meet you. Do you have a business card that I could take, and so we can continue the conversation over email? So you want to do it in a way that's polite, but also acknowledges that you may want to talk to someone else, they may want to talk to someone else. You never know if the conversation is waning and the person that you're talking to wants to mingle. So just thinking about where you both are in the conversation, and sometimes it's helpful to just let someone go. I think about sometimes when I have a conversation with someone and they're kind of looking around or they're looking somewhere else, and it's clear they're kind of ready for the conversation to be over. So sometimes you have to just let people out and say, oh, I'm going to go get some food. It was really great to meet you, and try to figure out what your exit strategy is going to be. So I came up with some frequently asked questions that people always ask when we do these types of sessions. So I figure you all can kind of help me answer them as well. So what's the best way to know that the person you're talking to will be a really good resource to you? What do you all think?
Maybe do some preparation.
Absolutely. Yep. Exactly. You should always prepare. Whatever you're going to, whether it's a dinner or a reception, you should always prepare and know who your audience is. So that's a really good point. What about if you're talking with someone and you realize that you've forgotten their name? How do you bring it up politely? What's the best time to ask?
Maybe like right before you say something, like
Mm-hmm.
try to throw your name right away.
Yeah.
Like not sort of cutting them off.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When I meet people, I try to say their name at least 3 times out loud. So your name is Serene, right? So I'd say, hi, Serene, how are you? I'm Alana. And you'd say?
Hi, Alana.
And so then I might, as we're talking, I might say, oh, Serene, blah, 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 blah. So the more that you say it, the more that your brain will remember it. We also live in an age now where people wear name tags whenever they go places. But it might also be important to know how to ask someone how they pronounce their name, so you don't pronounce it wrong. So thinking about that as well. How should you react if someone is cold or rude?
Change your way.
Huh?
Change your way.
Change your way? Yeah. Or, maybe just politely exit. If the conversation is not really going the way you want to, you don't have to stick around. So that's where a lot of times if things are a little awkward, I'll say, will you excuse me? I'm going to go grab some food. And I am one to never turn down food. So I will just exit over, or I'll say, oh, I'm going to, head to the restroom. So sometimes it's not even worth it, and you might just need to politely exit and end the conversation. How do you interject yourself into an already formed group? So there's already a group that's, having a conversation, but there's someone in that group that you really want to talk to. How would you interject yourself into that group? Yeah, I like to it depends on the group, but I'll just kind of stand closer and closer to the group, and as people are saying stuff, I nod. I'll just nod, and slowly people will kind of just let you into the group. Every way is different, but that's kind of how I do it, and it's an easy way to just get in there. But you're right. If someone said something and you have a story or a connection to that, just kind of add yourself in there. It's not always the easiest, and sometimes it feels a little awkward. And I know I've been in groups where people have kind of interjected themselves in and it's felt awkward. But most of the time, unless someone's having a really serious conversation, the group will let you in. So how do I stay in touch in a meaningful way with the people I meet, not just left with piles of business cards? What should I ask for? Phone, number, email, etc. What do you think? How do you stay in touch? So what I like to do is when I get someone's business card, if I ask for a business card and I get the business card, I'll turn it over and I'll write something relative to the conversation that we had. So likes to ski in Colorado, or just turned 40, or whatever it is. And when I email that person, I make reference to that thing. So it was really nice to meet you. I really enjoyed our conversation about our love for reality television, whatever. And so that's a way that keeps it more personal. And so it's not just like a form, email that you're sending back to someone. You can always ask people. So when you ask for a business card, I would ask, what's the best way to reach you? I'd like to stay in communication. And that way someone can say, I never respond to emails, give me a call next week. And so then you know what the best way is to continue the communication. How and when should I send a follow-up response? How do I maintain my network? What do people think about sending a follow-up response? When's the best time to do it? I would say like a day or two later. If you go to an evening event, maybe the next afternoon. But you're right, you don't want to wait too long because then they forget, but you don't want to be at the event sending the email as you're there. So like the next day, the day after, especially if you met someone and you made a direct connection and they're expecting something, whether it's an email or a phone call, then you need to do it as soon as possible because you lose that network, or you don't look as timely or maybe as professional if they're expecting to hear from you and then they never do. Does that make sense? So a few more questions. Should I prepare for networking ahead of time? We kind of talked about that. Yes, you should always do your research, kind of know where you're going, what you're doing. How do I start a conversation? What's the best first things to say? Yeah, why you're here, who you are, and kind of just getting to know people. That's awesome. Once you start a conversation, whose job is to keep it going? You don't want it to turn into an interview. So you're just asking questions, they're answering. You're asking questions, they're answering. So think about also ways where you can turn it around. So if you ask something and they answer, maybe you say, so you ask, what do you do for work? And they answer and you say, oh, I'm a student and I study XY major. I've been learning about in my classes something relative to maybe what they do. So thinking about ways that you also can insert yourself in, so it's not necessarily like you're just doing a back and forth of question answers. How do I convey genuine interest during the conversation without being overbearing? Nod, yep. Don't cut people off when you're talking to them. And asking questions, but not just what do you do, kind of not just the regular questions that people feel like make it seem like you're just trying to use them for your network. So kind of listening to what they're talking about and maybe following up. You know, what did you do this weekend? Oh, I went and walked my dog. Oh, what kind of dog do you have? Like just thinking about those things will convey that interest and make you feel really, and make them look at you as being really genuine. If you're looking for something, job, collaborator information, what are good techniques to get that without being too forward or pushy? I always like to ask, you know, I like to ask the grandiose questions of, you know, if I ask someone what they're doing, or a lot of times if I talk to students, I'll say, I asked you this, what's your dream job? Ask somebody that, even if they are, you know, working, ask them, is that your dream job? Or, you know, what do you like to do besides what you do? Or what are important characteristics of the folks that work in your organization? So kind of thinking about different ways to ask about information relative to what they do. What are techniques to reveal your strengths without sounding like you're bragging? Also thinking about that you don't have to, this isn't an interview. So it's not like you have to tell them every single thing about yourself, but thinking about the interesting things about yourself and how you can relate that. Maybe that's telling a story. Maybe that's, you know, relating it to an experience that you had inside or outside of the workplace. So it doesn't have to be, you know, I have a 4.5 GPA and, you know, I'm top of my class, and you just kind of laundry list, but think about the ways that in a conversation you can insert those things in a very subtle way. So we're going to take some time and practice, because we all have to do it, and so why not practice? So what we're going to do is you'll find a partner, and what you'll want to do is, because I don't think any of you know each other, introduce yourself, find some common connections and possible ways to collaborate. I just said on your leadership journey, but you can also talk about what your interests are, right, relative to your major. Ask about who else people should meet, whether, you know, if it's relative to a major or some sort of interest in a student organization, and then figure out a way, obviously, there's not a lot of us, but figure out a way how you would then remove yourself from that conversation once you're kind of over. So why don't you two work together, and then you two work together, and then you and I can